welcome to Durham Needs to Know, a show about civic engagement in Durham, Connecticut. I'm your host, Karen Cheney, and with me today I have two guests who are running for the Board of Selectmen in Durham, Connecticut this November. Chris Balay is running for First Selectman, and Tom Hennick is running for Board of Selectmen. And I would like to begin with just the basic question, why did you decide to run for First Selectman, Chris?
Well, I've been involved in the community for the last 21 years since I've lived in Durham. Been on planning and zoning and inland wetlands, as well as many other organizations within town. And when the opportunity came up to sort of be more involved in town, it just seemed like a natural progression. It's a wonderful town with a lot of possibilities, and I thought I could help bring some of those possibilities to life.
Thank you. And for you, Tom?
So, Karen, first of all, thank you for having us today. I've always been a believer that you need to give back to your community. My wife and I moved here with our family back in 1989. I've been on a couple of boards. I was on the Board of Education for 10 years. I chaired it for 5. I was on the Board of Selectmen for 2. And I believe that you have to give back. And then when I heard that Chris was running for First Selectman, I said we might make a really good team. The experience that we bring together. So I was asked to run, and I was honored to join the team.
Some of our viewers might not know, but Tom was chair of our Board of Ed in Durham, and as chairman of the Board of Ed, depending upon how you do your statistics, 80 or 90% of our taxes go to the Board of Ed, and so he's used to balancing a complicated budget. What would you say your experience in the Board of Ed gave you in
headaches? No, just kidding. No. The interesting thing about a regional, first of all, you've got to learn to work with others, not only within town. You've got 2 towns, and you've got 2 different constituencies to work with. And then on top of that, you have to realize that you've got to listen to the parents, you've got to listen to the students, you've got to listen to the staff, the administrators, the professionals. You have to remember that the professionals you hire the professionals, that's your primary function. And then sometimes you have to sort of suppress some of your own personal thoughts because you want them to be able to do their jobs. And it can be a really difficult balancing act. And the other part that's hard, you mentioned budgets. Budgetarily, a regional school board is hard because you are also your own Board of Finance. You'll pick up a newspaper or see a story about the Board of Ed went to the Board of Finance with a budget, and the Board of Finance slashed it, and there's wringing of hands and everything. Well, you're playing both roles. So you have to be fiscally responsible, but also responsible to the school district. So the ability to work with others and all walks of life, all different constituencies, is something that I would bring to the table after 10 years on that board.
So Chris, what would you say your experience has been? Like, I was thinking about the Durham Fair, your experience with the Durham Fair, reaching across party lines, working together for a common good, that kind of thing.
Well, the problems that face Durham are not partisan or political problems. They are problems of stagnation. We've not done any significant building or changes in Durham along Main Street or really anywhere else in many, many years. None of the problems are partisan. So my work with the Durham Fair, which is certainly not a partisan organization at all, you need to work with everybody and get everyone together. One of the things about government is that, as First Selectman, you do not have the ability to sort of tell people what to do within the town government. Everyone has their own sort of place that they are in charge of. The tax collector, the town clerk, these folks are all independent offices. So you need to be able to get together and work with them to build a consensus on what you want to do, as well as with the rest of the town. Part of my goal here is to make the town of Durham work for the people of Durham in as efficient and powerful a way as possible.
I can say, just from a personal point of view, having worked as an election official, and you're an elected registrar of voters, but you kind of report to the state, and yes, you're in town hall, and yes, you're paid your salary by town hall, but you don't actually report to the First Selectman. And it is a very difficult concept for people to think, well, what are you doing in town hall? And so being able to work with everybody who's elected can be very complicated.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you're not the CEO. You're, you're essentially a manager at best,
yeah.
who's attempting to get everybody, all the stakeholders involved, find out what they need, and do what you can to make the town successful.
One of the things that I'm not sure if people are aware, but you worked with Freedom of Information Commission
Correct.
for how many years?
Since 2001, so
Yeah,
it'll be 23 years in January.
That's what I said,
Yeah.
almost 25 years.
Yep.
And we called you a lot in our office because you know a lot about transparency and the responsibility of an elected official to your constituents. Can you tell me a little bit about your experience there?
Sure. Well, prior to joining FOI, I was a journalist, and people said, gee, you're changing completely. I said, no, not really. It's about bringing information to people in a different way. The only way democracy works, Karen and Chris, and everybody understands that, is if the people are involved. And the only way they can stay involved is if the governmental entities are transparent. So our role is to make sure that people have access to public meetings and access to public records. And when folks don't believe they're getting that, they come to us, and our commission has the power to order boards and commissions to act properly. Sitting on the Board of Ed for 10 years, and the Board of Selectmen, I was able to, and others when they called, to say, look, you really don't want to do that because you're going to then be the target of a complaint. And what you don't want to do is be spending a lot of time up in Hartford defending decisions that you made that were contrary to being open and accessible.
I don't think people in Durham realize how much money you saved the town by preventing complaints. I know that in the election office you get a lot of Freedom of Request acts, and we would call you up to say, how can we make them define it? Because people give us these vague requests, and you want them to define it, but you don't want to anger them and think that you're refusing. And so you were a tremendous help, just, averting problems. And that's what I was saying when you were on the Board of Selectmen before. You're aware of how to keep the problems from arising.
It's clearly in line with what Chris was saying about nonpartisan. It's clearly a nonpartisan position to say to folks, look, we're telling you what your obligations are, but also what your rights are. You mentioned calling from the office, say, look, those people have made a request for those records, but if you don't understand what it is, have the conversation with them so that they're not thinking that you're automatically, slamming the door in their face. Our goal is to try to bring people together. Yeah. At the FOI Commission, we get upwards of between 600 and 700 complaints a year. If we didn't do the sort of things, the conversations we had, we would double that and we would be overwhelmed.
Yeah.
We couldn't possibly handle that.
Yeah.
As an educator, my role is public education, to go around and tell people, again, what your obligations are, but what your rights are, so that they understand that most of the folks that we deal with, and we would deal with as selectmen, are volunteers.
Yes.
They're people who have other lives and other jobs, and so they come and they say, I don't care. No, the law says that you have to have the agenda. The agenda has to be specific, and you have to be transparent, or if you don't, then you're going to spend more time in the people's court than you will getting the job done.
Yes. I know this with the Board of, with the Planning and Zoning, is if you go against the law, people sue Planning and Zoning all the time, and our town pays the attorney fees to defend you, and it's better just to be willing to acknowledge that law exists to begin with.
Sure. I mean, we have regulations. We must follow the regulations. It's important that you always, everything happen in front of the public. So, with planning and zoning, really with any of the commissions or any of the boards, backroom negotiations are not allowed.
Yeah.
It all has to be done in front of the public so they see exactly what you heard in order to make the decision you make. If you do anything other than that, you're just asking for people to challenge you, and that's wrong on a number of levels.
When I go and I talk to the civics classes, I tell the students that sometimes you see somebody outside Durham Pharmacy and you say, oh, I wanted to talk to you about this issue, and you feel blown off if you don't get a response. And that's your job is saying, no, I can't talk to you outside. This public time for public comment is gone. It's outside. Here's how, send a letter to this address or something. And I try to explain to the public that you can't talk to them, that it's against the law.
Yeah.
And,
But of course, as
yeah.
officials, it's our job to tell them that, to make
Yes,
sure they know
yes.
that. You know, if you've got something to say, send it to, for
Yes.
planning and zoning, send it to the town planner.
Yes.
You know, these are the appropriate places to address it. You can't address us individually like
Yes,
that,
yes.
that's against the law.
Yes.
Ex parte communication, so.
So I know a lot of people have been discussing corn. Can you tell me what your plans are for corn if you get elected?
So the community center,
Yeah.
which is what we call it
Yes,
nowadays,
I'm sorry,
the
yes.
former corn building, now the community center, I think is a great opportunity for the town to have a place for folks to gather and for events to happen. I, thank the folks who brought that about, who forced the petition to prevent the building from being torn down.
You know I'm the one that did that, right? Is Eileen and I that
Yep.
did the petition?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
so I just want the
Exactly.
public to
Yep.
know, yes.
Yeah, and which was great. Would have been ridiculous to ruin that building and
Yeah.
to get rid of it.
Yeah.
There's still more to go there to bring it to completion, and then to set up a organization to manage and work with it going forward, to make it as available to as many people in town as possible. I think it is some place that high school kids and other kids should be able to go after school and have some place to go. Certainly the seniors, as many different folks to use that building as possible.
I was on the reuse committee, and I know the variety of uses for it and the visions are so much greater than has been expressed since the building got started. And I would love to see some of those original ideas developed. And so I know you're going to be hearing from me
Yeah.
about use of corn. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everything from the possibility of bringing back something like BASRAP to
Yeah,
corn,
yes.
The before and after school daycare options for parents. Yeah, there's a lot of possibilities for that
yeah,
building.
yeah.
So, and would be a prime focus of the administration going forward to maximize its use.
How about the recreation, the authority under the ARPA Act to do work on the playground? Do you have any goals for the Allenbrook playground area?
Well, I'd like to make it as open and as available to everyone as possible. As many things there as we can. I believe it is going out to bid for the playground rego. I'm not sure that the bid is as detailed, the request for bid is detailed as it ought to be. But again, that whole area in town, I think, has a lot of possibilities, and we can really do some fun stuff there.
Yeah.
Karen, if I may, one of the things we have to work toward is finding more places where our community can gather,
Yes.
where we can get together as a community. One of the nice things about our town was always togetherness, and what we've seen a lot of in recent years is divisiveness.
Yes.
It's nationwide,
Yes.
but it's happening in our town as well. And I think if we had places where people could gather, rather than looking at screens and throwing bricks at each other verbally
Yeah.
on the screens, we could get together and talk and have a pleasant
Yes.
encounters as opposed to
Yeah.
conflict all the time. And that's why corn and the playground and things like that are so important.
This was my goal with having a community center. And again, I was talking about helping set up an entrepreneur club at the high school where they could run a coffee shop at Corn or after school to sell snacks, and they could get experience and they could raise money, and people at Corn, because we need a place we can all drop by and talk as a group. And I just think, as you're saying, especially post-COVID, a combination of the screens and post-COVID, we need something like that.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about your experience on the Board of Selectmen before. One of the benefits of having you as a candidate is you can hit the ground running, and there's a steep learning curve to being on the Board of Selectmen, and I really feel like we have two really experienced people who can begin work immediately. And ever since we had Laura leave and then George, and he had a steep learning curve too, I think it would help give stability to our town having this level of experience. Can you tell me what you think your level of experience brings to you in
To
this
be
position?
candid, there's still going to be a learning curve.
Yes. Yes.
I was filling an unexpired term and only on the board for 2 years, but you see the machinations, you see how it works, and I have some ideas as things that I think we could make, make the process smoother. There was some conflict on the board, and as the minority rep at the time, you're sort of on the outside looking in, and the hope would be that we'd be a more cohesive unit this time and bring the experience of building a budget, of listening to people. Again, some of that, my professional experiences, bringing that in as well, and Board of Ed experiences. But the process.
Yes.
You're just not starting it cold. You have an idea what's supposed to happen on every week or every other, and so you can sort of bring some of that to the table. And some of the ideas that people who are completely brand new have are great, but there's a process that can be frustrating when you're new in an office. And so I guess maybe I've already had some of those frustrations, so maybe a little bit farther down the road.
In one of my former lives, I was a town attorney for some towns, and they would get newly elected first selectmen in, and they would call me and say, oh, I'm going to void the union contract, and I'm going to fire all these people because I don't like the letter he wrote in the local newspaper. And you'd have to say, no, this isn't a business. You have First Amendment.
Right.
Public sector unions are different than private sector unions.
Right.
And I know, just from my background, my own, what a difference it is to come in and suddenly be a government official instead of a CEO. So just having that exposure is very great. One of the things that I think you bring to the office is your experience in the land use. And people don't realize that planning and zoning are 2 points. It's planning and zoning, and they mostly focus on the zoning. And one of the things, I guess I wanted you mentioned it before, that impact of being on land use boards. And you're on inland wetlands as well,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And what that brings to you, your knowledge of economic diversity in town and things like that.
Sure. The land use boards give you a really good idea of what's happening in town largely.
Yeah.
And part of our problem at the moment is that not a lot is happening in town.
Yeah.
We have some undeveloped properties that are not being developed. We have various issues. Working with the land use boards, you really want to be able to impact that more. One of the places where Durham has sort of fallen short is in the planning portion. We've done a lot of work on the zoning regulations, a lot of stuff but the town overall has not had a coherent long-term plan for where they want to go and what they want to do. The plan of conservation and development was done now a number of years ago. That's got to be 8 years ago now that was done, 8 or 9 years ago. And we've had some other folks look at where we are in Durham, but nothing really has moved forward there. And we really need to concentrate additionally on the planning portion. Where do we want Durham to go? There are projects that have happened in the last couple of years that were good. The sidewalks on the south side of town,
Yes.
but we also have state money to do sidewalks on the north side of town,
Right.
and that does not seem to be happening. There's been no sort of work on that. It's been great to sort of see people come into town, who are looking for some place to walk with their kids and to walk those sidewalks, because they're, I think, it took a long time to get them done, but I think they're a real benefit to the town and other things of that nature.
Yes.
Trying to make Durham a more friendly town for people looking to relocate, and I think there's a lot to be done there.
We have, people don't realize how much turnover there was in Durham after COVID. During COVID, a lot of people sold their property. It had been really dead, flat for a while, and people couldn't sell their property, and then COVID hit, and all of a sudden we have all these new residents in town, and they're showing up at our meetings, and they're showing up volunteering for different activities. And I think now's a real good time to spark Durham to send it off into a new direction now.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential
Yeah.
there, and we really need someone to sort of grab that and work with it.
Yeah. So I'm curious, because you were at the Paper House Productions, right?
Sure. So I was one of the 3 founding members of Paper House Productions. I was their tech director and treasurer for a number of years.
Yeah, yeah. So your job, you're with PEZ, right? Can you tell me what your job is there?
So I've been IT director at PEZ for just about 25 years now. Involves sort of managing all of the technological functions of the company.
Wow.
From software to telephones, security systems, camera systems, all of that is under my purview.
Yeah.
So I've done large-scale software implementations there. We've with the multi-million-dollar budgets to sort of get Pez, not just the candy from the 1950s.
Yes.
We're still there every day selling candy. So I've been there just about 25 years. In the event that I am elected for Selectmen, I will resign that position because for Selectmen is a full-time job. It's not something you can do as a volunteer. It's there's a lot to do there. There's serious challenges at Town Hall at the moment. The software that runs the financial side of ours is badly out of date. That will need to be updated almost immediately after the election, and that will be a serious project for whoever we end up with as finance director. Again, we don't have a finance director at the moment, and that's a serious issue as well. We've been out without one really since the beginning of the summer. We had one briefly in the fall, but they were still trying to learn the job when they resigned. So that's been a real issue. There's a lot of challenges at Town Hall. It's not going to be an easy job, but it's a challenge that I'm excited about.
Yeah.
So.
I know that I dealt a lot with the IT at Town Hall when I was with elections, because we're trying to make it as easy as possible to apply for elections, to do things, and there's a constant updating and a constant effort involved, and we really don't have an IT person. Nicole does the best, the assistant town clerk does the best she can, whoever's in that job, but it's something that we should be tying in to, in my mind, with the library and with the school board and things. And again, there's boundaries drawn what you can do, but it seems like we could also piggyback somehow on some of that.
Yeah, it's a lot of, IT brings a lot of options to running almost any organization this day and age. You can't avoid it, so no point in trying.
Yeah, I'm very excited about having somebody finally update some of these things in Town Hall, the possibility of that. I'm very excited about it.
Again, one more challenge.
Yeah.
So.
In terms of the town and getting along with Region School 13, there has often been friction between the town of Durham, its citizens who feel they're paying too much money to the school district, or feel that they aren't being listened to, or feel like Middlefield has too much power. So my question is, how do you think your background with the Board of Ed can help in the town dealing with the Region School
Well, I come back to something that I tell people all the time. When I was on that board, we didn't know what political party anybody was on.
Yes.
We worked together. We almost didn't know what town people were. I mean, we knew, but it didn't matter. And I think bringing for something we fought, Board of Education, putting it on the November ballot, I think that was a horrible mistake.
Me too.
But it's done. So we have to go back to the mindset that we all have to work together. And you have to be mindful of the fact that, again, we talked about it earlier, many different constituencies, and you cannot attempt to impose your will on everybody else. You have to be able to listen, you have to be able to negotiate, you have to be able to mediate, and so all of those things we did with a great amount of success. We didn't always agree.
Yeah, no.
Some people, I mentioned, we had an event last week, and the person that I disagreed with frequently came up and gave each other a big hug because we worked together for the betterment of the communities. People complaining about there is a frustration because the regional school district budget is such a large part of our tax dollar. But people have to remember that the good school system is one of the reasons that people move to our town, our towns, both towns. And if you lower the quality of your school system, you're also ultimately lowering the value of your home. And you have to constantly remember that. And also remember something that people don't like to hear, is that on a Board of Education, we are hamstrung to a certain extent by certain mandates that must, federal and state mandates that must be followed. And every year the cost of some of those goes up. So some of that is not self-imposed. So.
Before I leave, I want to say one of the things, Durham has always punched above its weight because we've always had people who were very active at the state level or the regional level. And I was going to ask, I thought both of you, coming with your backgrounds, you've had extensive contact with both Democrat and Republican legislators, people at the state level who help decide grants, who help decide budgeting issues that things might come to Durham. And I guess I'm wanting to ask how y'all envision reaching out beyond Durham.
Well, absolutely critical. You know, Durham is a small town in a small state. And if we can't work with the towns that surround us and with the state government and then ultimately with the federal government as well, we're essentially just cutting ourselves off from possibilities. You know, the state has money to give to towns and is looking to do that. But largely if the towns don't ask, you don't get it. And so, you know, working with our state legislators, working with the Council of Governments, with the towns directly around us, finding out how they're doing things, you know, will be incredibly beneficial. And one of the things that's been severely lacking in the last few years.
Yes.
And also, you know, I was the legislative liaison for the FOI Commission for a while too. So, you know, I have no problem talking to people who are for you or against you. I mean, we did a lot of that as well. And in my role now, mediating complaints, different legislators are involved in that sort of thing. So there's no hesitancy to talk to these folks. They can say no, but at least they know that you're sincere and you're, look, we need help with this. Can the state help us with this? Or, hey, neighboring town, you know, maybe we can work together on this and solve a traffic problem or solve a speeding on roads problem.
Look at Middletown, the water development, how the systems, how Durham benefits is by reaching out to other small communities.
Right.
I think that's where we're going. Well, it's going to be sad. I hate to end this conversation because I'm learning all kinds of things. But thank you both very much for coming, and I appreciate it. And good luck in November.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you at the polls. Thank you.